Hey everybody, welcome back to Therapists Unmasked. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Sam, and today we are talking about what it takes to find a good therapist.
We hope you enjoy the episode, and let's roll the intro. Hey Sammy,
Hi.
how are you?
I'm okay. Yeah.
Me too. Today's a gloomy day outside. It was raining on and off all day today, and I am exhausted. I was out pretty late last night, and so I'm feeling pretty dead today. But we're gonna make it through, right?
We're troopers.
Awesome. It's been about like 2 weeks since we last checked in with each other. So what's going on? Is there anything else that's been going on with you as of lately?
Um, there've been a few things, but I think the primary thing is just me, um, trying to relax a little more, not really get into my head as much.
Mm-hmm. In
Yeah.
what ways have you been trying to do that?
Seeing my friends more,
Okay.
spending more time with my family if I can. Um, yeah. What about you?
So for me, grief has been affecting me a little bit in the last few weeks because again, I feel like there's been some good things happening. Doors have been opening up for me, but I am just like I wish my mom was here to see it, you know? And as of lately, it's been so easy for people to just be like, "Oh, like she's still watching over you and, from up above."
Yeah.
But it's easy to say that, but if you're actually going through it, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm aware of that, but I wish she was actually physically here to see everything. And I was actually talking to Gabby about this a couple days ago when we went out. She's like, I totally get you. Like, just let me be sad. And I get it though, when people tell me, like, oh, she's watching you from up above, they're trying to make me feel better. And most of them have never been through that situation. So I get it. They're trying to make me feel better and they're trying to say the right things. Sometimes you don't know what to say in those situations. I know that when I've had people who lost their parent, I didn't know what to say before my mom passed away. I didn't know what to do or say. Sometimes I still don't. But I just want her physically here to see everything. It just sucks that so many things have happened career-wise for me after she passed. She would always be like, "Did you get your counseling license yet? Are you going to get this job yet? Like what's going on? What's happening?" She was always excited to know about those things. And to know that everything else happened after she passed away, it sucks.
I know it really does. And at the end of the day, you have those happy memories of her.
I do.
And you know how she would react in those situations. I'm sure those feelings are going to come and go.
No, for sure. That's the only thing that's been affecting me in the last few weeks. And because of the grief, then depression hits, right? Slowly, I've actually been working on myself in terms of my depression, which is really good. In the last few weeks, I've been trying to go to the gym more. I'm going at least 2 to 3 times a week, which is great because before I was only going like maybe once or twice a week. And it's been very therapeutic, especially a huge stress reliever when it comes to work. And I've also been trying to push myself to do my chores and the things that I need to do, like laundry and all that. It's still been hard, but I had to like mentally tell myself like, okay, Ashley, like you need to get up and you need to do this or you need to do that. Depression can really impact the way a person thinks and the way a person just does things throughout the day. And I wish people understood that more. But I am giving myself grace because of the fact that I'm actually doing things more than I was doing probably like a month ago.
That's good.
You
Happy
know,
for you.
so I'm in a good space in that sense. I'm a work in progress.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say we both are.
Yeah, no,
Both are a work in progress. And, the constant reminder that we're not just going through this alone. Like today was a huge example. We both texted each other in the morning. I was like, do you want to come in today? Do you want to do this today?
Yeah,
And then, kind of mentally kicking ourselves saying, no, we have to do this.
yeah,
We have to do this today. Otherwise, it'd be a while
yeah,
until we're actually able to like see each other. Because
yeah.
on top of this, we both have individual lives that we do every single day, and we have other plans. We have different responsibilities. And so, yeah, today being, one of those gloomy days where
Uh-huh.
you just want to stay in bed,
Yep.
you want to just relax, not think about anything, and also tomorrow being Monday. It stinks, but I'm proud of ourselves
Me too, man.
for being here, for doing this, for trying our very best to get out of that mindset of being just stuck inside.
Yeah,
So
for
this is
sure.
a win.
Yeah, no,
This
you're
is a
right.
win.
You're right.
Starting off the week strong. Or, no, I'm sorry, ending the week strong.
Yeah, no, you're
instead of
right.
starting it, but
You're right, because even this morning I just felt like the depression kicking in and just not wanting to do anything and just wanting to sleep all day. So the fact that you were like, "No, we have to get this done." If
yeah.
you didn't do that, I would probably still be in bed right now.
Oh no, trust me, when you texted me telling me, "Hey, I'm not really in the mood. I don't want to do this today." I was about to turn the covers over and just stay in bed. But I didn't because I looked at my calendar and I was like, next time I'm free is going to be in so and so
Yeah.
weeks, not
Yeah.
days, weeks.
Yeah.
So I was like, no, we need to do this. So I'm glad I was, the person to kick you out of bed today.
What would I do without you? I'm
Who
telling
knows?
you, man.
You never have to find out.
I love it.
You're stuck with me.
I love it for me.
You're stuck with me.
Oh, man. Well, so today we're going to be talking about how to help somebody find the right therapist for them, right?
Yes, that was actually one of the questions I was asked when we did our Instagram
Q&A.
questions. Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of you guys were actually really curious.
Which was awesome.
It actually really shocked me. The amount of people that were really curious on how to find a therapist.
I know.
I never thought that was like a thing. Like I always, because I've been around it for a while now in undergrad and it's my career.
Yeah.
Well, it's our career. I always thought it was just, plain and simple, but a lot of people actually don't know what steps to take and how to actually start going about even finding a therapist. Something that was actually brought up this week at work is we were doing surveys. And one of the questions of the surveys was, what stage of contemplation is your client in? And I was like, oh, interesting.
Huh.
It's interesting because, those stages are, there are 5 stages. There's pre-contemplation, contemplation, action, plan, and maintenance. And so we were taught that pre-contemplation is basically someone telling you like, oh, you should go to therapy. Contemplation is that's when you're like actually thinking about therapy. So the fact that they asked that question on the survey for my clients that are already in therapy got me thinking. I was like, okay, that's a new one. I didn't actually think that would be a question considering they're already here.
Yeah.
So knowing that a lot of people are interested in finding therapists, they're already in the contemplation phase.
Yeah.
They just need to find the resources to find the proper therapist.
Right. And, actually, even me being a therapist myself, last year was the first time I was really like, okay, I need to find a therapist for myself, right? And I was one of those people that was like, okay, where do I go from here? How do I even start? What do I even do? What do I want in a therapist, right? So that's something that people need to sit and think about first when it comes to finding a therapist. Like, who is your ideal person that you feel like you can trust and be comfortable with? Who's your ideal person that you feel like you can talk about anything with, right? I know with me, for me personally, in finding a therapist, I like to find somebody who is of like similar culture as me, somebody who's Hispanic, right? Because which is actually kind of hypocritical of me because my therapist is not Hispanic, right? I actually originally looked for somebody who was Hispanic, but they were booked. So they were like, all right, but you can have this therapist instead. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'll try. I mean, she's great. Don't get me wrong, she's great. But me personally, I think I would prefer somebody of a similar culture as me. So then, if I'm talking to her in Spanish about something, like I'm mainly
there's a lot of words. Yeah. And I know there are some words that I forget in English. And I'm like, it's said in like this in Spanish. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, this.
Yeah.
And that's how I am with my supervisor. My supervisor, we like our supervisions are like sometimes half in English, half in Spanish, because there's like some situations that we swap on and we're just like, oh, and da 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 da. Oh, and then da 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 da. So, having that person to
Exactly.
like
No, that's
actually connect with,
exactly.
I get it.
Because even with my therapist now, like, again, she doesn't speak Spanish. So, like, when I say something in Spanish, because I'm mainly in therapy because of my mom, right? To get through the grief. So, when I say, like, oh, my mom used to say this to me, she'll be like, okay, what would your mom say? And then I would tell her, but she'll be like, okay, what does that mean, though? And I'm like, like, I don't want to have to explain it because some certain things, like, make more sense in Spanish than they do in English. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, my mom was iconic for all her sayings.
Oh my God. I
But
know one that's
yeah,
very
yeah,
weird in English.
yeah. So like if you say it in English, it doesn't have it's just different, you
hmm
know? So like sometimes she'll kind of like look at me like, okay.
Yeah, there's this one saying that it's hysterical in English,
Mhm,
but we know the meaning in Spanish.
mhm.
It's sana sana corrida de
The
rana.
rana. Yeah.
And in English, that translates to like, it's okay, butter a frog.
Yeah, it sounds crazy. See, it's things like that, like it just doesn't make sense in English. And that's
Yeah.
why, for me personally, I would probably prefer having a Spanish speaking therapist so then they can actually understand. And you don't have to be like, okay, but like it means this. And like, having to explain that stuff, it can be frustrating.
On the other side, though, having a therapist from a different culture can also be a good thing because of the fact that you may have to explain the situations or the meanings a little further, that internally you might better understand what it is that you're saying to them without even thinking about
Good
it.
point.
Because, yes, like you said, there are a lot of sayings in Spanish
Yeah.
that we know in Spanish,
Uh-huh.
but we don't really think about the meanings in English. So when it comes time for us to translate, then it's like, oh, it means this. And sometimes it does click a little better.
Good point, Sammy. And honestly, it probably helps the therapist learn more about their client's culture too,
Yes.
for them to be more culturally competent. That's actually a good way to see it from the other side, right? Like you'll help them be more culturally competent. You'll be educating them about your culture, right? And they can also, better understand the saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
So giving them all that education would actually help the therapist
Yeah,
just as much.
especially if they were to have another Spanish speaking client
Right.
from a different culture, maybe this time they might not feel as, worried. Maybe like you, who knows, maybe you're the first and then you're helping them get better for the next one.
Absolutely.
But actually, I was in a similar situation when I first started at my job.
Mm,
I was seeing, I believe she was 16.
mm,
And I'm sorry, I can't say I was seeing. I was supposed to start sessions with her. I just had like general intake and we were supposed to start sessions. Her mom wanted her to start sessions with me. However, she believed that because we weren't of the same culture, that I would not be able to understand her. It's kind of like what you're saying, that because you don't know if that person is going to better understand you because of the culture. So I have to say, you can't give people the benefit of the doubt without actually going through it, because you like your therapist.
yeah, I do. I do. And I was very hesitant at first because I was very big on like her, her also being Hispanic, right? Because I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't have to explain these things to my therapist, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it just doesn't make sense. And I worry that they might judge me. I don't know. Which obviously, hello, we're not
Yeah.
supposed to do that, but still, me being me, anxious me,
Yeah.
I think about those things. But she's still great,
Yeah.
regardless of the fact, no matter where she's from, she's still great because she's professional. She knows what she's doing. She specializes in what I'm dealing with, so it doesn't really matter.
So when you found your therapist,
Uh-huh.
what certain characteristics stood out?
So that's a good question. She challenges me, she challenges my thoughts, which I've said so many times before because I like to be challenged
See ya.
because I am a negative Nancy.
CBT.
Uh-huh.
She
Yep.
uses CBT.
No, she uses a lot of CBT on me, and she makes me do the CBT homework, right? Like challenging my thoughts of like what supports this thought, what goes against it, what's the more realistic thought that, so she does that, and that stood out to me the most because I need that, because I am an anxious thinker. I'm a negative thinker every day of my life. And for her to challenge my thoughts like that, I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. Maybe I shouldn't be thinking this way. She also uses active listening skills. She validates my emotions. Even if I'm doing something that I probably shouldn't be doing, she'll be like, give yourself grace. Even though you did this thing, you've made so much progress from healing from it. This was just a step back, but give yourself grace because you've come a long way since then. Because like I always get scared of like, oh my God, I'm going to tell her that I did this really bad thing and she might say something, she might judge me, but she's like, no, give yourself grace, right? You've come a long way since a couple months ago. This was a setback and now you just got to keep moving forward. She says that, and that's just so validating. She validates my emotions. She validates the things that I do. Even if it's not the best thing, she's just like, okay, now we can just move forward. Right? So that's also something that stood out to me because I don't get that from people a lot. I have friends that'll be like, Ashley, what are you doing? Like, you're being stupid right now.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make me feel good, obviously, because I know that, but
you're still gonna do it.
Yeah. And so for her to validate my emotions is so like comforting to me, So those are the two things, really.
Okay, that's good. How could you explain it to our viewers of what's the best way for them to find, or what context should they look in when trying to find the therapist that they feel most comfortable with?
So I've had people come up to me and be like, I want to find a therapist. I just don't know where to start, right? I usually recommend them to go to psychologytoday.com.
Yes.
Which is like I feel like is the best way to look for a therapist.
She has a profile there.
I used to have a profile there.
Oh, it's not there anymore?
No, because since I don't work in private practice anymore.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh.
But I did feel really cool when I was on it, not gonna lie. But yeah, I always refer people to that website because it's so awesome. You can search a therapist in your area, and then you can filter down to the cost. Because let's say you don't have insurance, you can filter it down to how much you can really handle financially.
Yeah.
And then you can also filter down to the insurance that you have. And then you can also filter it down to the situation that you're going through, whether it's grief, depression, anxiety. They'll give you all the therapists that specialize in whatever it is that you're going through. And you can also filter it down to whether it's a male or a female, somebody who is Hispanic or who is of whatever culture that you are. That's why I love that website so much, right? And then you can also take the time to read their bios. What I would tell somebody to look for in a bio is what the person specializes in and what you really feel like they can help you with in therapy. Like, what are your goals? Think about your goals in therapy and how you want to accomplish them, right? If they talk about, this is how I can help you with this situation, then great. Like, this is something, if you feel like you need that, then go for it. If they prefer a similar culture, if they prefer somebody who's in the LGBTQ community, right? Or if they feel like they prefer somebody who is of the opposite sex or the same sex, because sometimes people might feel more comfortable telling their things to somebody of the opposite sex or the same sex, right? So again, like, you just want to find a therapist who validates your emotions, right? And is somebody who uses great active listening skills, somebody who listens to you and makes it about you more than about themselves, right? Because there are therapists out there that disclose way too much about themselves.
They do, yes.
Right? I think disclosing information about yourself is okay to an extent, right? If it relates to the situation,
What information would you say is good to disclose versus what's not good to disclose?
So let's say somebody's coming in because they lost a parent, right? I wouldn't say like, oh my God, I lost my mom too, and like I'm so depressed and blah blah blah, right? But I would just be like, I know exactly what that feels like to lose a parent, and it's not a great feeling, but we can get through this together, right? So
Mm.
kind of disclosing it in that way. But if somebody is just telling them their whole life story,
No,
right,
that's not
that
okay.
is just not a good therapist.
No.
That is not the one for you, because essentially they're there for you. You're not there for them,
Yeah.
right? We're supposed to be focused on the client.
Mm-hmm.
What we're going through is like out the window at that point. So if you're disclosing that much information, if you see that your therapist is disclosing that much information, that person is not for you, because that just goes to show that they have their own issues that they need to work on. Which is why, again, we've emphasized so many times, like, if you're a therapist, get a therapist,
Yes.
because you can't do that in a
Mm-mm.
therapy session. You can't like let them know that you're going through things in a therapy session.
Something I also want to emphasize is I know like a lot of people talk to their friends
Hmm.
and they think of their friends as their
Yeah,
therapists. Don't confuse talking to your friends about your issues for talking to a real therapist who actually has the proper training to help you cope with the situation probably better than your friends. It's okay to talk about it with your friends, but I think, finding somebody that's able to help you learn skills, listening, and relaxation, like methods. That way you can actually get through the situation and probably even feel safer to disclose the information that you disclose because I know you care about your friends and there's a great deal of trust between friendships, but sometimes it isn't the best situation to disclose everything to your close circle.
for sure. For sure. I think that just overall, the biggest thing to look for is if you connect with the therapist,
Yes.
if you feel like they're validating your emotions, they're listening to you. There's therapists out there who like will be looking around the room while you're talking, and not gonna lie, we have those days. Let's be
Mm-hmm.
real. We have those days where we'll be like looking around and just out of it,
Yeah.
I definitely have those days myself, and I obviously try not to make it too obvious, because, hello, professionalism. But
Yeah.
if they're doing that too often, and if they're just making the sessions more about them than anything, and if they're giving you unsolicited advice that the client didn't even ask for, you gotta go.
Yeah, I don't think that's for you. I think the best lesson I've been taught as a therapist is to make sure the client feels validated, make sure that they know that this is about them. It's not a judgment zone. You are 100% there for them, but at the same time, don't antagonize them. Don't make them feel like their decision was
A bad one.
a bad one. Actually help them cope with the decision that they made because at the end of the day, like it was already a decision that they made.
Yeah.
Don't, bully them or make them feel less than for making that decision. Um Not saying that either of us do that, but
No. But there are
there are
there
people,
yeah.
there are therapists, who do that, and I feel like I'm not trying to be direct to any groups of therapists, but I just know that, there are sometimes the older generation may feel like they don't understand the younger generation may feel like the older generation doesn't understand them. And so
Yeah.
there's that age gap that people also
Hmm.
look at and they're just like, well, this therapist is much older than me. How are they ever going to understand what I'm going through?
Yeah.
And it's true, especially with different generations
Mhm.
now, like kids nowadays, it's different versus adults. And
Yeah.
um, in terms of culture,
Hmm.
language, everything. So I think it really depends on the type of person that you are in that moment,
Yeah.
the type of person that you want to seek. I think our viewers just also need to know that there's not going to be a therapist that is not continuously learning because there's so many changes going on in the world. We're learning something new every day. And it's okay for your therapist to ask you to further explain. It's okay for you to be confused at some points. But when you're confused, ask those questions because your therapist will be doing the same thing.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting the whole age gap thing, right? Because I've for me personally, my clients have always been like, "Oh, I wanted to find somebody who looks at least the closest in age with me." I was about to say who is, but they don't know how old I am,
Uh-huh.
but who looks close in age with me, because I feel like I need somebody who understands me, my generation, like what's going on in the world, and like how social media works, and like our slangs and everything, and which I do. I'm up to date with a lot of that stuff. So it's nice that they come to me because they feel like I understand them, right? But then I also think it's interesting that I've known people who are like our age but prefer somebody that's older than them,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is interesting because from the people that I've spoken with, they were like, I need somebody who just has had a lot of experience in life and has just a lot of expertise in therapy and whatever they specialize in. I just think it's interesting just because me personally, I would prefer somebody that is around our age, just because I feel like they would just get it more.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk in my slang, and so I feel like I would just need somebody who just gets it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, I feel like I would need somebody who's a little older
Interesting.
because having a therapist who's a little bit older than me might, be better to give me a better insight of how to handle situations.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little better than my parents could in terms of my career, in terms of my life. I just think, they're a little bit more wiser,
Right.
and we're still learning. At the end of the day, they are too.
Absolutely. And so overall, in order to find a good therapist, you just want to make sure that you connect with them, right? You
Mm-hmm.
connect with them, that you feel heard by them, not judged by them, because if you feel like you're being judged by your therapist, you gotta
Oh,
you gotta
no,
go.
gotta go. At the end of the day, it's just about communication. Communication is key
Yes.
in so many aspects
Yes.
of everybody's life.
You know what? Communication is really important in a therapeutic relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the client should be able to give feedback to the therapist if they're not doing something enough, or if they said something that the client didn't like or something. The client should be able to voice that, and the therapist should be able to receive that and change up their style a little bit or accommodate them in any way that they can, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they are not receptive to that and saying, I'm the therapist here, like I know what I'm doing, if they're saying something like that, no.
No, no. But something our viewers also should be aware of, different companies have different policies. My company doesn't, if you get a therapist, you can't easily say, I want a new therapist and switch because they're not going to accommodate that. What my company says to do is talk to your therapist,
Mhm.
see if you guys come eye to eye in terms of what made you feel uncomfortable about them, see if that can get resolved. And if it doesn't, that's when we will try our best to find an open therapist. Otherwise, if we can't find one, I'm sorry, you're going to have to be put on a wait list for somebody else.
When a client does tell you, hey, like this isn't working out, if have you ever had that happen before? And like if so,
I
like
recently had that happen
how
actually.
did you feel about it?
So what had happened, we ended up talking about the situation. My client didn't tell me that they wanted a new therapist. They had just told me about a situation that they didn't like.
Mhm.
And then we resolved it. We rescheduled for a new session because the time up for that session was up. So, we resolved everything during our last session. And we said, okay, so we'll see each other the following week. Something happened with her and she had to reschedule. So we rescheduled for the following week. But then out of nowhere, she called my supervisor and said, the same situation that we had already resolved and state that we did not resolve the situation
Mm.
when I was under the impression that we did.
Mm.
And so, with that being said, my supervisor did talk to her, and in the end, I believe they did not come to terms with what happened.
Mhm.
And so, they were asking for a new therapist. However, that was essentially the deal, that they had to wait to see who had open availability to see. And I believe in the end there was a therapist who
Mhm.
was able to take that client. It stinks that we weren't able to have a therapeutic relationship, but I'm glad that client is able to express her emotions and continue therapy with somebody who she may feel more comfortable with.
What advice would you give somebody who is trying to seek a therapist?
It takes time.
It does take time.
It takes time.
A lot of
So,
shopping around.
yes, you shouldn't feel rushed to do it. Because if you're feeling rushed, if you're feeling like, oh my God, I should have done this like years ago, and then that anxiety is just kicking in and you're just like all over the place because you're not going to get it done. Like, you're going to feel panicked, you're going to feel all over the place. And
It's overwhelming.
it's very overwhelming. So you have to know it takes time, not only for you to find that therapist, but also to find a therapist that has that availability. I would also say be flexible. Be flexible with
Yes.
times, because your therapist may not be able to see you at the same time every week. It may be a different time, like it may be in a different setting. It could be virtual, it could be in office. You'd never know. So I think the best advice I say is, be patient and
Mhm.
be flexible.
And I think another thing is to be open-minded
Yes,
too.
that too.
Because sometimes, again, you might not find somebody
Who's
who
on your
is,
list?
yeah, who meets like the perfect therapist, right?
Yeah.
Because I know I had a specific list for me, but then my therapist turned out completely different. And still, I love her. I
Mhm.
love what she does for me, right?
Mhm.
Because I love the skills that she uses on me. I love how she, again, validates my emotions and everything. I love it all.
Yeah.
So another thing I would say is to be open-minded, even if they don't meet
Your
everything
criteria.
your
Because
criteria. Mhm.
sometimes what you think you need isn't exactly what
Yes.
you need,
And it's funny because I thought I needed all of that. Everything that was on my list,
You
I thought
thought you
I needed
needed,
it.
and no.
No, I don't. I don't.
So definitely be open minded, but don't be closed off to the therapist who is brought into your life, because you never know how that relationship might work out.
Another thing I would have our viewers do is make a list. Make a list of the character traits that you would want in somebody that you can confide in,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think that's a good starting point. And then make a list of what you want to focus on in therapy.
Yeah.
Make a list of your goals. And then once you do all of that, you can then go on Psychology Today and see if these people fit everything in
Yeah.
that list.
And something I know I said in the first episode, but I want to reiterate now when we talk about, since we're talking about like finding therapists and all that, please do not go in with the mindset of thinking they're going to fix your problems
Oh my
automatically.
God, yes.
That is not how this works.
And if they say that, go away. Like,
Go
don't even,
somewhere
don't
else,
even, yeah.
please. No, I want to reiterate what I said in the first episode, being we are guides.
Yeah.
We are not magicians.
Nope.
Even though I wish that
Yeah.
I was a magician, or I wish
To solve my own problems.
yeah, or I wish I had the power to turn back time. Like, we don't have powers. We're regular people
Mhm.
who studied this field, who have mastered this specific field and are doing the work we're supposed to do with the interventions that we learned. With that being said, we can't resolve everything, every issue that you have. However, we can guide you into the right path of making sure that you don't recreate those decisions that you now are trying to avoid.
Right.
And so I cannot stress that enough. Don't do that.
Yeah.
You shouldn't go in with that mentality thinking, oh, if I find a therapist, it's on their hands.
Some people also think, like, why would I go to a therapist to get advice if I can just get that from my friends?
It's not the same.
Yeah, it's not the same.
It's not the same. Your friends are cool for talking to you, making sure that they comfort you, that they're there for you in the tough times. We need our friends. I need my friends, you need your friends.
Yeah.
But your friends aren't going to teach you the skills
Mm-hmm.
that we can teach you during sessions. Your friends aren't going to talk to you once a week
Mm-hmm.
to reiterate different coping skills, to make sure that you continue to use those
Mm-hmm.
coping skills, to help you decipher your thoughts if
Mm-hmm.
you write in a journal. Like, your friends aren't going to do that. They're great people for being there for you, but at the end of the day, you need somebody who is going to be there for you in that during that time that you have everything that's going on.
If you do have insurance, it's important to call your insurance to make sure that that therapist is covered under your insurance.
Not just call. I know there are websites on the back of the card, of the insurance card. For instance, MVP.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's an insurance here.
I don't know. Never heard.
Anyways, that's an insurance in my state, and there's a website in the back. And when you create a login and everything, you're able to search up either doctors,
Oh,
dentists,
yes, yes. Blue Cross Blue
therapists.
Shield also has
Yeah.
that too.
So, I mean, for people who aren't the best, like aren't tech savvy, yeah, call. But for people who just want to look through a list and stuff and not really have to talk to somebody on the phone,
Mm-hmm.
there's a website. There's typically a website behind every insurance
Mm-hmm.
card to actually help them look for the person that they want to look for. And then you go on Psychology Today and you find their profile.
There's definitely other websites out there that would help you find a therapist, but I feel like Psychology Today is the best one because of all the filters that it has to help you
Sponsor
narrow it
us,
down.
please.
I know, literally. Because I feel like it just helps people narrow things down to what they need, right?
Mhm.
I think another thing to not look for in a therapist is if they break your confidentiality.
Okay, so I have a question about that. What is considered breaking confidentiality for you?
For me, I work in school, so like there's certain things that I have to tell the parent. It's mostly situations if they're just in danger, if they're putting themselves in danger, themselves or others in danger,
Mm-hmm.
right? But other than that, I wouldn't say anything else.
Mm-hmm. So the reason I ask that is because we're in different,
Working capacities,
yeah.
yeah.
And so in the agency I work with a team of people. So it's me, it's an advocate, it's a psychiatrist, it's my supervisor. And so we all work in unison to make sure that we offer the proper care to our clients.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, it's not breaking confidentiality when we get together to discuss the care of the client. Obviously, there are some things that are fine to, keep to yourself in terms of that session. But when it comes to talking about the proper care of the client,
Oh, for sure.
then that's not breaking
Yeah, I do the
confidentiality.
same thing. I also work with the student psychiatrist or
Mm-hmm.
therapist outside of
Yeah.
here, and obviously if I need to, I do tell them those things so then we can be like, all right, like how can we work together to help them through their situation,
Mm-hmm.
right? So of course, yeah, I definitely tell them if necessary to help them get through whatever it is that they're going through, right? But I mean, like breaking confidentiality in the sense of telling their friend, telling their family
Yeah.
member, telling, you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's, to me, that's when there's a fine line. You would have to tell the parent if, again, they're in danger, they're putting other people in danger. You know what I mean? But other than that, if the therapist is telling your whole life story to other people,
Yeah,
no,
that's breaking confidentiality.
that is definitely breaking
Yeah, and it even
confidentiality.
says it on the liability form. Confidentiality can only be broken if you are harm to yourself or others.
Exactly.
Different fields have different criteria of what it means for breaking confidentiality. Something I would tell our listeners is to make sure you go over with your therapist what breaking confidentiality means in that agency or in that field.
That's a good point,
Mhm.
because it's easy for a therapist to be like, everything you say stays here.
Mhm.
But sometimes if they fail to mention like when they need to break confidentiality, that's a red
The client's
flag
going to be surprised
and
if they,
upset.
yeah, if they say, "Oh, but I thought nothing was going to be said," when someone shows up at the door. And it's
Yeah.
like, "You said this."
Yeah.
Or if a child's parent receives a phone call and the parent barges into the room of the kid and is mad, and then the kid gets mad at the therapist because it's like, you said that what we were talking about was confidential.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, if you said that you're a harm to yourself or others, that's going to break your confidentiality right there, because you're a minor and you have to talk to the parent. I think we pretty much covered a lot of the bases, but if you guys have questions, we will are more than happy to answer them.
Yeah. And you want to avoid therapists who break confidentiality, right? Again, that we just spoke about that. We want to avoid therapists who disclose too much about themselves, right? We want to avoid therapists who, if you feel like they're judging you, you gotta go,
Yeah,
right? Because no therapist should, we're trained not to judge the
we
client.
are trained, yes.
And if they feel like they're being judged, if they're making faces,
But I also, going with that, I want to also say, unfortunately, making faces, it's
true.
sometimes it can't be helped.
Mhm.
However, if you are in a situation where you feel like you are being judged, go back to that therapist and talk to them about it, and actually state that was some that you felt uncomfortable in that moment because you saw this happen, and actually see where it goes from there. Don't just immediately like throw the hat in and be like, I'm done.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, it might be something that was an accident. It might be, honestly, just that person's face. Because let's be honest, Salsa said this once, when we did the episode with her and Andreas. She said that when she first met me, I messaged her on our Zoom chat,
Oh,
and
she
I was
thought
like,
you were an asshole.
yeah. So she messaged me I messaged her in the group, and we were having class, and then she said that she looked for my name, she found it, and she saw my face just like completely like
Yeah, she
mute.
thought you were,
Like
yeah.
it was resting bitch face. Let's
Yeah.
be honest. And I have that when I'm
Yeah.
really serious, but then
Yes, you do.
yeah, when I'm really serious, like, or I'm just not even there, sometimes like that's just my face, or I'm just like focused on something, like that's just the face I make. However, when you start talking to me, I have a smile on my face. I'm a complete, like, my face is completely different. It transforms. Where I'm going with that is, sometimes it can be an accident if a face was made, if an emotion was conveyed. What I'm trying to say is just talk to them, because at the end of the day, they're still human. We're
That
all still human.
And again, that's something that our viewers should look for in a therapist, to be able to have that open communication with
Yeah.
them when they feel like the therapist did something
Mm-hmm.
that they probably shouldn't have done, or if they said something that made them feel uncomfortable. You should be able to have those kind of conversations with your therapist. If you don't agree with something that they said, have those conversations with them,
Yeah.
because
It's not a battle at the end of the day.
yeah, no. And again, you're supposed to confide in your therapist. You're supposed to be able to put your trust in the therapist. So if you don't have that communication, then obviously that therapist isn't for you. If that therapist is just disagreeing with everything that you're saying and is just not receptive to their feedback, and they're just
That's
gonna do
when
whatever
you
they want,
should
yeah.
find somebody else.
Yeah. If they're just gonna do whatever they want instead of actually tackling the issue, you gotta go.
Yeah.
Because clearly they don't specialize in that issue.
Yeah.
And therapists need to be honest. If they don't specialize in a specific issue, refer them out to somebody else.
Yeah. Don't be scared to do it. Like,
Yeah.
it's better for them. And at the end of the day, it's better for you, because you won't feel like that anxiety of, oh my goodness, I need to help this client, but I don't know how.
And if the client feels like they're not making any progress in their situation,
You need to reevaluate.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. I know I've had my moments. Me as a therapist, like I know I don't specialize in certain things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So domestic violence is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I know I had somebody reach out to me who went through a domestic violence situation, and I was contemplating, oh my god, should I take on this case or should I not? What should I do? And I felt bad because I was like, oh my god, like clearly she saw something in my profile that made her want to call me, right? So I'm like, but the reality is that I don't specialize in that. So I had to tell her, I'm sorry, I don't specialize in your situation, but I want to be able to still help you find somebody who does specialize in that because you deserve that,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Whereas I do specialize in domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
I specialize in trauma. But a lot of people think that the specializations that I have also go with, for instance, grief.
Mm.
I don't specialize in grief. I'm in the trauma department, but I'm not a grief counselor. That's when I would also refer them to the grief counselor. That way they can get the help that they need. You're right. Find somebody who is specialized within that field. Don't just assume that because they're a therapist, they know
Everything.
everything under the sun.
Yeah, no,
Because they don't.
no.
I know, like, I know they don't.
Yeah, yeah.
And if
And
they do, give me your secret,
yeah,
please.
but that
I want to know what do you do?
even then though, it's just not realistic. If there's somebody out there, if there's a therapist out there that's saying that they specialize in everything and yet you still feel like you're not making any progress, or you feel like you're just not moving towards healing or whatever the case is, it's not for you.
Yeah.
That therapist is not for you. I think that's it. I think those are the biggest things, is just the trust and them validating your emotions and them being the person that you can just overall go to and have them challenge your thoughts and your emotions, and being able to properly give you the coping skills that you need to get through whatever your situation is. That is the therapist for you,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And the therapist who makes you feel judged and makes you feel like you're just not healing from your situation, that
Yeah.
therapist is just not for you.
Exactly.
I think we got everything here.
I think we did, but if we didn't, let us know. We are more than happy to answer questions in our DMs. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I think we're pretty much done.
All right, awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, share this with your friends and family. Please follow us on Instagram, therapist_unmasked. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.